Ever get curious about those little combination locks? You know, the ones on like old lockers?
I always find myself kind of fiddling with them, trying to figure out how they actually work.
Well, today we're going full on locksmith and cracking the code, literally, on the BDS three-wheel cam lock.
So whether you're planning on using one of these for a project, or maybe you're just curious like me and love a good deep dive, this one's for you.
We've got the LSC Security Supplies product page right here, giving us all the nitty-gritty technical details. But we're going beyond the instruction manual, you could say, thanks to a really cool blog post we found from the Lock Mob. They're a locksmith company all the way in Brisbane, Australia, and they're giving us the real-world perspective on these locks, where they're up to the task, where they fall short, and why context is king when it comes to security.
Okay, so I've actually got one of these BDS cam locks right here in my hand.
It's, surprisingly hefty for something so small.
And the product page says it's made from, wait for it, zinc alloy.
Who knew zinc alloy was the secret to keeping your valuables safe? Yeah.
But before I get too sidetracked by the wonders of metallurgy, let's bring in our expert to help us unpack all of this.
So, what exactly are we looking at here, and why are these BDS cam locks so ubiquitous?
What's so interesting about these BDS cam locks is that they're like the unsung heroes of the locking world. I mean, you see them everywhere, but never really think about them.
And BDS, by the way, it actually stands for bolt, deadbolt, spring mechanism, which in layman's terms means it uses a spring-loaded bolt that locks into place. This makes it super versatile and easy to install, which explains why you find these cam locks on everything from your kitchen cabinets and desk drawers to like gym lockers and even some mailboxes.
So they're popular because they're simple and get the job done. Kind of like the trusty hammer of the lock world.
Exactly. And as our locksmith friends down in Brisbane pointed out, a big selling point for these is that they're resettable. No need to mess around with keys, just got to remember your combination and you're golden.
Which actually brings up a point from the Lockbob's blog post that I wanted to ask you about. They mentioned that, yeah, these locks are great for basic security, but they're not exactly Fort Knox.
Something about a limited number of combinations, and I gotta admit, that part made me a little uneasy.
I can see why. And this is where things get really interesting, but also a tad concerning. So, you've got 3 wheels on a lock like this, right?
And each wheel has 10 numbers. So if you do the math, you're only looking at 1,000 possible combinations.
Hold on. So, someone could just like keep trying every number until they get in. That doesn't seem very secure.
Well, it's all relative.
Okay, so brute force is a real thing with these locks. Got it.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not time to, like, freak out and replace every lock I own, right?
Probably not, no. And this is where, like, thinking about the context comes in, which the Lock Mob emphasized in their post. It's all about assessing risk, right? What exactly are you trying to protect with the lock, and how much effort would it actually take for someone to break in?
So, like, my gym locker, where I just have, last week's laundry, probably not a huge target for a master thief.
But say, like, a cabinet full of, I don't know, important financial documents or something.
Now, that's a much better example. So let's say your gym locker has that basic 3-wheel 1,000 combination lock on it.
Could someone technically crack it? Yeah, maybe. But is it really worth the effort for, what, some sweaty gym clothes? Probably not. The risk versus reward just isn't there.
Right, totally. But those important documents, that's a different story.
Exactly. Suddenly the stakes are way higher, so you'd want something way more secure, right? Maybe a lock with like way more possible combinations, or even ditch the whole combination lock idea altogether and go for a different type of locking mechanism. It all just circles back to context.
And that's where those locksmiths over at the Lock Mob, they've got the advantage, right?
Because they're not just thinking about like the locks themselves. They're thinking about what you're actually trying to protect with that lock.
100%. They deal with this stuff every single day. I mean, they're the ones who see the real-world consequences of, like, choosing the wrong security measures.
It's their bread and butter. And speaking of real-world implications, there was this other little detail in the Lock Mob's post that really caught my eye. They were talking about cam sizes. And I gotta be honest, I kind of skimmed over that part.
What's the deal with cam sizes? Like, what does that even mean?
Oh man, good question. That's something most people don't even realize about these types of locks. So the cam, it's the part that actually interacts with your cabinet or locker door or whatever you're locking up to keep it physically shut.
It's a little arm, that sticks out of the back of a lock.
Oh, okay, yeah, got it. I'm picturing it now. Okay, so then what happens if Like the cam is the wrong size for your locker or whatever.
Well, then even if you've got the right combination, that lock isn't going to do a thing.
Mm.
Like, you could have the most high security combination lock in the world, but if the cam doesn't physically fit into your cabinet door or locker door, you're totally out of luck.
So it's like having the perfect key, but it opens the wrong door.
Perfect analogy.
Oh, right.
And believe me, that is so frustrating when it happens. And I think that's why the locksmiths made a point to mention it. They're not just being nitpicky. It's about saving people from that, wait, why isn't this working moment.
So it's like the old saying, but for locks, measure twice, log once.
And then maybe triple check that cam size while you're at it.
Absolutely. It just goes to show, even with something as like seemingly simple as a combination lock, there are still layers of things to consider when it comes to security.
It's crazy how such a tiny detail, like the size of that cam,
Mm-hmm.
can totally make or break the whole security setup.
It really makes you think about like all the other stuff we just kind of take for granted when it comes to security in general.
Doesn't it? It actually, that reminds me of something I wanted to mention. So we've been talking about like physical locks or keys, combinations, that sort of thing. But this whole idea of brute force, right? Just systematically trying different combinations until you hit the jackpot. That's not just limited to like padlocks and cabinets, is it?
You're talking about the digital world,
Yeah.
passwords, all that.
Bingo. Think about it. If a simple three-wheel lock with, what, 1,000 possible combinations is vulnerable to brute force, then it really makes you wonder about those 4-digit PIN codes we use for, like, everything these days.
Oh man, don't even get me started. I've still got some online accounts out there where my password is password123, don't judge.
Hey, we've all been there. But in all seriousness, maybe this whole deep dive could be a bit of a wake-up call. Because really, the same principles apply whether you're talking about a lock on your front door or a password for your online banking.
It goes back to context.
So are you saying it's time for me to, like, finally level up my password game?
It's never a bad time. Using strong, unique passwords, turning on two-factor authentication wherever you can, and just being really aware of like phishing scams and stuff like that.
Right.
That's basically the digital equivalent of like making sure you've got the right cam size and that your lock is properly installed.
It's all connected. Who knew that a deep dive into combination cam locks would have us, like, rethinking our entire approach to digital security?
See, knowledge is all connected. That's the cool part. You never know where one little rabbit hole is going to lead you.
Love that. Well said. And speaking of rabbit holes, I think it's time for us to climb out of this one.
Yeah.
We've gone from the basics of, what was it, BDS cam locks to, like, the surprisingly complex world of security in general, both in the real world and online.
We've learned that context is key, that brute force is a legitimate concern, even for locks that seem kind of basic at first glance, and that size really does matter, at least when it comes to cam sizes.
So true. For everyone listening who's ready to unlock even more knowledge, and trust me, there's a ton out there on this topic, be sure to check out our show notes. We'll have links to that LSE product page, as well as that awesome blog post from the Lock Mob, our locksmith gurus from down under. Until next time, stay curious, everyone, and stay secure.